Okay, 6 o'clock. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the meeting of the Planning Committee. First of all, are a few matters of housekeeping. In the event of an emergency, there are no practice alarms planned, so if this evening the alarm sounds, please evacuate the town hall by going down the main staircase or the back staircase to the High Street and then to the car park behind the town hall in St Ronwell Street. Audio recordings are made of all meetings, and these recordings are published on the Council's website. Please would speakers use microphones at all times and speak directly into the microphones at all times. Members of the committee may use electronic devices to access their meeting papers, and the use of mobile phones and other devices, including cameras, by visitors is welcomed, but you are requested to use them discreetly, to set them to silent, and to not use voice or camera flash functions. Those using such devices are asked to remain seated during the meeting. We will have a break at 8 o'clock if there are still items remaining. There are toilets on every floor in the building, an induction loop in this room. I am the Chairman, Councillor John Manning. On my right is Deputy Chairman, Councillor Jessica Scott Patel. The rest of the committee are opposite me and will introduce themselves, starting on the extreme right with Councillor Sykes.
Councillor Sykes, Stanway Ward. Councillor Moore, West Mersey Ward.
Councillor Pauline Hazel, Shrub End Ward.
Peter Chillingworth, Great Tay Ward.
Jackie McLean, Copford and West Stanway Ward.
Brian Jarvis, Lexton Ward.
Jill Hayes, Castle Ward.
Ray Gamble, St John's. I'm subbing for Councillor Chua.
Rosalind Scott, Wivenhoe Quay.
Mike Lilly, East Longland.
Thank you very much, and very welcome you are, Councillor Gamble. The planning officers this evening are Sue Jackson, Eleanor Moss, James Ryan, and Andrew Tyrrell, I believe. Amanda Chidgey is here for procedural matters, as is Jonathan Baker. To all those present in the room at this meeting, we are a quasi-judicial committee. We make our decisions based on material planning considerations, following the laws of the land and the policies of the council. If we are minded to refuse an application, we will use such considerations that will stand up in a court of law. The material planning considerations are listed in the committee's agenda. Item 2 is have your say. Has everyone who wishes to speak registered their name? If not, could they please do so now?
There's no one else indicating, Chairman.
If anyone has a petition they wish to present me on any of the item on tonight's agenda, please do so now.
Again, there's no one else indicating, Chairman.
Item 3 is substitutions, which we have already covered. Item 4 is urgent items, so there are no urgent items. Item 5 is declarations of interest. Councillor Sykes.
7.3, non-pecuniary, as I know the applicant.
Councillor Scott Patel.
I'd like to declare an non-pecuniary interest for 7.4, as it's been recently made known to me that I know the speaker speaking against.
Okay, item 6 is to confirm the minutes of the meeting held on the 1st of October 2015. Is that a proposal, Councillor Hazel? Can I have a seconder? Councillor Scott, thank you. All those in favour?
Chairman, that's agreed.
Okay, I'll now go through the applications one at a time. On 7.1, we have David Neville speaking against, Roger Gillies speaking for. 7.2, I have no speakers. 7.3, I have Robert Pomrey speaking for. However, it is for a refusal, so I'm sure he will want to speak. 7.4, I have Edwina Taylor speaking against, and I have Councillor Dave Harris as a visiting councillor. And 7.5, I have no speakers. Could I ask Ms. Chiddy to confirm the applications that we could take en bloc, please?
Chairman, as you have no speakers and you have no indications from the committee they wish to debate the items, you may take a decision to approve the recommendations contained in the report in respect of item numbers 7.2 and 7.5.
Is that a proposal, Councillor Gilmore? Is that seconded, Councillor Chillingworth? All those in favour?
Chairman, that's unanimous.
Thank you. Okay, we'll now do item 7.1, and it's Sue Jackson to present.
Thank you, Chairman. The application site is currently used as a long-stay car park, the site being owned by Colchester Borough Council, and the proposal is to erect 2 3-storey office blocks within the site. The council has a tenant for one of the office buildings, which will be occupied by Burkitt Long. This plan shows the adjacent development to the application site, predominantly office development. There's obviously Rowan House occupied by Colchester Borough Council and the Octagon and other office buildings within the locality. There's also a small retail park off Sheepan Road. The nearest residential properties are in Sheepan Place, which is properties here. And you can see their rear gardens back onto Westway, and then the rear of the application site is along the boundary here. This photograph is looking towards the site from the bottom of Balkan Hill at Middleborough, and then there's a series of photographs taken within the application site looking towards the boundaries of the site and the adjacent development. Here you can see the Octagon in the distance, and obviously Rowan House, and what you can also see is the trees and hedgerows that abound the majority of the boundaries of the site itself. This photograph shows the existing access, and it's proposed to use this access to serve both of the office buildings. And this particular photograph shows the raised table across Sheepan Road, where there's an existing pedestrian access to the car park, and this will be retained as the main pedestrian access to the office buildings. This plan shows the existing trees within the site, and then a row of poplars which are just outside the site but along the boundary of the site with Westway. And then a series of plans of the buildings themselves. The block plan has been amended to enable the trees fronting onto the roundabout and Sheepan Road to be retained. It involved a slight rejiggling of the car parking spaces within the site, but the total number of spaces remains the same. Basically, the building in blue moved slightly further to the west to allow the trees on the frontage to be retained. And a series of plans of the floor plans of the building, and the roof plan showing the solar panels within the roof area, which is proposed for both of the buildings. And again, the second building, slightly smaller footprint. And these are the elevations. You've got the elevation onto Westway, and then the bottom photograph shows the main entrance to the main office building with the entrance feature you can see in the middle of the slide, and the side elevations, and again the smaller building, similar elevations being proposed. This section simply shows the relationship of the height of the building, a three-storey building, in relation to Rowan House, and you can see that it's obviously a lower building and probably lower than the majority of other office buildings within the area, obviously considerably lower than the Octagon building on the Middleborough roundabout. The photo montage show the building in relationship. The top left is in relation to hilly fields, and the top right is the view from the bottom of Balkan Hill. Bottom left is the view from Middleborough, and similar view in the bottom right-hand corner of the photograph. This photo montage shows in more detail the decorative brickwork, the sort of honeycomb brickwork that's proposed on the elevation fronting towards Middleborough, and similar design on the smaller building fronting towards Westway. The application details the consultations that have been received. The only outstanding consultation at the time of drafting the report was from Anglian Water. We've now received confirmation that they have no objection to the application and they're not recommending any additional conditions. We've had responses from the Environment Agency, the County Sustainable Drainage Team, Highway Authority, etc. Our Landscape Officer and Arboricultural Officer, none raise any objection to the application. It's also been considered by the Development Team, who requested a travel plan, and that's secured by a condition, recommended condition. Members will note that we have received objection to the application. The objection is received from residents from from Sheepham Place, in this area here. As you can see, they're separated from the application site by Westway and by fairly long rear gardens. And as you can see by this photograph, which is taken from the edge of the site looking across Westway towards the houses in Sheepham Place, the majority have fairly high screening at the bottom of their garden, separating them from Westway. So in terms of the impact of the development on those residential properties, it's thought to be fairly limited. The residents have raised a number of concerns, concerned about additional traffic, whether roads will be adequately maintained, also raised concerns about drainage matters. These are all dealt with in some detail in the committee report. As I say, I think officers feel that the development is sufficiently distant from those houses to have very limited, if any, impact on them. Obviously, in terms of traffic, the amount of traffic will actually be reduced by this application rather than current usage as a car park, where obviously there's a turnover of vehicles during the day and the car park is available 7 days a week. The office buildings will obviously be occupied at far more restrictive times, and the parking is less than is currently proposed as part of the car park proposals. So as I say, the officers are comfortable that the impact on residents will be fairly limited, and the recommendation is for approval subject to conditions. Thank you.
Could I call David Neville, please? Hello there. Yes, have a seat. You'll have 3 minutes. You'll get a bell after 2. The time will start as soon as you press the button in the middle.
Right, okay, I'll try to get through this quickly. This is not necessarily well research, but this is my thoughts. I'd like to read them out. This development does not begin to make any kind of sense in this area. We're already completely overloaded with office complexes all around this place. In Middleborough, St Peter's Street, the town centre itself, and North Station Road. While everywhere around us, more dwellings are being shoehorned in, regardless of the result. The traffic overwhelms us every day, every morning and every night. For hours on end, we're completely unable to move anywhere due to traffic congestion. The unmanageable amount of cars and other vehicles squeezed into the already inadequate road network, namely Westway, Station Approach, Cowdrey Avenue, North Station Road, North Hill, St Peter's Street, Balkan Hill, Southway, Butt Road, Lexington Road, Simplin Way. Shopping list there. There's loads more, but I won't cover them all. All around the Octagon as well, indeed, as I walked up, if that map there would be completely solid with traffic at the moment, and that is the major concern. So to say that it has minimal impact on us is not true. I come from 19 Sheepan Place, so I'm one of the troublesome residents, I'm afraid. Yes, sorry, just catch up with myself. This development is set to rob us of one of the few car parks in the area, and what's more, throw yet more rush hour traffic, and that's the point, the rush hour traffic. It's the times that things will be leaving. At the moment, they leave at all times of the day, and with an office block, they're all going to leave en masse. So am I alone in thinking that the council should be looking into ways to improve the traffic rather than planning to add to it? I'd like to know how it can possibly be of benefit to the residents of Colchester, because in spite of what they say about giving a wonderful prestige office building, I don't see that it's actually going to benefit us. We've got enough office blocks, we've got far too much traffic. Right. Of direct concern, only 4 of the residents of Sheepan Place were asked for their feedback, and I think that's a terrible oversight. There's 16 residents in Sheepan Place and only 4 were asked, so I think that should really have been researched better. I think if you're to decide the issue on the good of the residents, then it'd be a no-brainer. It's supposed to supplement Rowan House for officers, and that's a facility we have no access to, and this would be more of the same, I feel. If it was going to actually make it better for residents, I would be all for it, but with the traffic and the other considerations of enough office space around the place.
Okay, I hope you got most of what you had to say. If you could just press the button. Thank you. Could I have Roger Gillies, please? Same rules apply. You'll have 3 minutes. Spell will go after 2. Time will start when you press the button.
Thank you, Chair. I'm Roger Gillis of Barefoot and Gillis Architects. We're the designers of the proposed offices for the Sheep Pen Road scheme. This commercial development represents a bold move on the part of Colchester Borough Council, in that the Borough is taking the initiative to encourage good quality office accommodation in the centre of the town, which will also serve to generate revenue for public expenditure. I believe this is the first venture of its kind, and as a practice, we're very pleased to be part of this initiative. We were appointed in May of last year, and the scheme that's been presented here today is a result of a good deal of positive input from the Borough's own planning department and discussions with the tenant. The intention is to produce flexible, well-serviced workspaces in buildings which are pleasant to work in and will have a strong presence on Westway and the Middleborough roundabout. The Sheep Pen Road site will provide 2 separate pavilions which relate well to each other both aesthetically and commercially, and together they'll create a compact, high-quality business hub. The Borough has successfully negotiated an agreement for a long lease on the larger of the 2 buildings with Burkitt Long, which is a firm of solicitors obviously in the centre of town, and they're a very prestigious tenant. Although Burkitt Long's specific requirements have been taken into account, the design of both buildings is sufficiently flexible to enable a wide range of occupancies. This degree of flexibility protects the long-term investment the Borough will make in developing these buildings. In producing our designs, we've sought to mitigate the environmental impact of the development as a whole. And I would just like to point out at this stage that the Essex County Highways has been consulted in quite a lot of detail about traffic movements. The Sheep Pen Road site has been identified as a site which can effectively lose some car parking spaces in order to make this commercial development happen. And they're satisfied that it fits in with their overall policy for the area. This is set out in item 1510 of the committee report. The design of the buildings themselves will be capable of achieving a high BREEAM score, and in order to create a development which is as sustainable as possible. The design of the building has been subject to a comprehensive raft of surveys and studies, all of which have been supportive of this scheme. It's in accordance with the local plan policy and the NPPF, and I would ask the committee to accept the recommendation of the planning officer. Thank you.
Thank you very much. If I could return to Ms Jackson to respond to any of the comments, and then we'll open it up to the committee.
Thank you, Chairman. I think Mr Newell made three main points. One, that Colchester is overloaded by offices. I think the response to that is that Colchester Council does have a tenant for the first building, the Phase 1 building, Burkitt Long, which obviously gives them the ability to relocate and expand their business remaining in Colchester. The second building, there is no tenant at the moment, but that building won't be built until we have a particular tenant in mind, so that will be a sort of a phased development, Phase 1 and Phase 2. In terms of traffic congestion, the site itself will have far fewer parking spaces than is available at the moment, and the amount of trips that are made by the office users will severely reduce the amount of traffic generated by the site. The majority of staff will be encouraged to use alternative modes of transport, obviously very close to the park and ride bus stop at Middleborough, numerous bus routes both in and out of the town centre and the main Colchester railway station, and that encouragement will be secured under the travel plan. Comment was also made in respect to the notification of residents in Sheepan Place. I think initially 4 residents were notified, but within a few days all 16 residents in Sheepan Place were notified of the application. In addition to the letters that were sent out, the application was published in the local newspaper, and notices were also put up on site, so it has received fairly extensive notification, both locally and obviously further afield as well. Thank you.
Councillor Hayes, as Ward Councillor, you get first crank.
I'd like to draw attention to the objection comment, well, the general observation, sorry, by Mr Bramhill about the cycling facilities, that in his opinion the proposed approved plans do not come up to the Essex guide standards, and I'd like to suggest that if this is approved, that there be a special condition that the cycle parking be subject to the approval of the officer to make sure that it is fully compliant with the guide, because obviously we have been very conscious of the problems of congestion, and it is desirable that as many office users do use alternative means as possible. But my general view on this application is that as a car park, this piece of council land is not particularly useful. It certainly isn't very attractive. And while I am very conscious that there's terrible congestion in the Middleborough area, particularly sort of particular times of day when the certain what's the word, parking price deals come to an end, then the whole of Middleborough car park suddenly empties and there's a complete logjam. But I don't actually think that that is going to be made worse by this, and I know that the residents may well find this sort of be a bit incredulous, but the very clear advice we're given is that this will actually generate less traffic than the car park currently does. And as for visitors of local residents not being able to find parking adequately, I mean, that is a terrible problem for residents of Castle Ward, but I hope that something may be done with regard perhaps to enabling them to park in Middleborough car park or one of the other car parks in the area. And it seems to me that on balance it is very important that the land be improved in this way, given that it does seem to be a special opportunity. There's a willing tenant in place, and in the long run it is going to be the sort of modern facilities that Colchester lacks.
Okay, I have Councillor Scott, Councillor Chillingworth, then myself, then Councillor Jarvis, then Councillor McLean. Councillor Scott.
It sounds to me like a very positive step forward for Colchester, and I too have great sympathy with the traffic issues, but I think that the answers don't lie in retaining this car park. I think it's clearly going to not make the traffic worse, and it's certainly going to improve the situation in terms of employment and prestige in the town. It goes with the plan that we have for Colchester, and therefore I would propose that we do accept this, subject to the conditions, obviously.
Did that include the officer agreeing the cycling, as Councillor Hayes suggested?
Yes, I think that's an additional line to the conditions, which I would certainly propose.
Thank you. Councillor Chillingworth.
Thank you, Chairman. I just start by saying, because this is a council application, I think it's appropriate that we scrutinise this thoroughly. That isn't to say I don't agree with the proposal, which to me it sounds a sensible thing to do with this land, subject to the loss of the car parking. I wanted to ask Mrs. Jackson what the land to the north of the proposal is. Will this remain as car parking? Is it car parking now, and will it remain as long-term car parking? The point is that I feel that there is a need for long-term car parking as opposed to the short-term, which is available in the multi-storey car park. There are lorries and cars that need to stay overnight. There are coaches, I think, that use this land, and where are they going to go in the future? If the land to the north is designated for their purpose, I suppose we could say that there is still enough of this long-term car parking to say that this is a reasonable proposal. As far as the office block, I think it's a handsome, or two handsome buildings. They are perhaps better, in my view, than some of the more modern, the older type of office block which we have in the area. So I have no problem with that. As far as the problems of traffic, and I do understand what the objector is saying, it is absolutely terrible at times, but I think it's right that the change won't affect this too much, except at knocking off time and arrival time, and there certainly will be additional problems round that roundabout, as I think they'll come out of Sheepan Road, waiting for the traffic to arrive from Balkan and round the roundabout. And I think it'll be a long, long queue down Sheepan Road at those times. But I think the highways aren't objecting, and I think for that reason we can't really say that that problem is going to be made worse by this proposal. But I would like to ask Mrs. Jackson about the other land. Thank you.
Okay, we'll go through the rest of the councillors and we'll answer questions at the end. I'll ask Sue Jackson to answer the questions at the end. I'm next. First of all, a question. Disabled parking, is there a mandatory minimum? Was it on there marked because I couldn't see it? If there isn't a mandatory minimum, should they not have some disabled parking there? And I have great sympathy for the objector, having spent a while going to college down Sheepan Road. I know how bad the traffic gets, but it actually comes down to what Councillor Chillingworth said. It's highways have not objected. And if Essex County Highways, as our experts, don't object, I think we all know what happens if we were to go to an appeal, so I don't think we can even contemplate that as a reason for refusal. I certainly support Councillor Hayes with the cycling. But I'm just a little bit concerned about no disabled car parking spaces on there, unless, of course, I missed them. Councillor Jarvis, then Councillor McLean.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to actually applaud this move because I think that it's a good commercial decision. The council own the land. Through prudential borrowing, they could finance the build very economically. They would be guaranteed a good income, rental income over quite a long period of time with a identified tenant. And I think it's good use of that land there, which I think has been pointed out is not ideal for some other purposes. I think it's quite a good site. I don't think the actual traffic will be increased by this change of use here. And I think also there are some people that would work there would benefit from the park and ride, which stops certainly within walking distance of that site. So overall, I would applaud it and say I think it's a good proposal and I would support it. Yeah.
Are you seconding Councillor Scott's proposal?
Thank you, Chair. I understand the connectivity with the park and ride. I'd like to know where the drop-off point is for that and how they're going to walk to these blocks. Is there a crossing or is it all the way around the Octagon building and then in that way? I just can't remember seeing any crossings from that roundabout or how they get to work. Because yes, it's a very good idea, but we need everything in place to make it easily accessible if we're going to encourage walking, cycling and no driving.
We've got one more councillor now, Councillor Moore, and then we go back to the officer.
Thank you. It's been mentioned that there are buses that park there. Now, presumably those buses are dropping off tourists to our town, and the buses need somewhere to go away and wait while tourists do their looking. Is there somewhere else designated for coaches to be waiting? Because I think it's a very important part of our tourism business. We're very keen on our tourism. It brings a lot of money into the town. We don't want to do anything that's going to make it more difficult for them. I'd like to check on that. I do get a bit upset with the constant car bashing. Most people wouldn't use their car if they were really good alternatives, and it's an aspiration that people are all going to get on the park and ride or get on their bicycles or all those things. The reality is most people do need to drive. Everybody in that car park is there for a reason, and have their needs been, or are their needs being adequately provided for elsewhere? I think that's... Oh, and the other thing is the archaeology. Is there I didn't see it in a quick glance at the conditions, because it's not that far from the Sheepan site, and there's probably some quite interesting archaeology. Is that being properly addressed? Thank you.
Sue Jackson, if you'd like to respond.
Thank you, Chairman. In terms of cycle parking, Condition 26 requires the applicant to provide the cycle parking facilities as shown on the approved drawings. I think in this particular case, the cycle parking is proposed adjacent to the side of the building, closest to this point, which is shown on the photograph, where the majority of people will actually be crossing the road. If you're coming by cycle or walking to the site, I think it's this particular route that you will take rather than using the vehicular access, which is round the corner into Shupin Road. So there's this sort of segregation between the vehicular entrance and the people accessing the site either by bicycle or by foot, which is why I thought that the position that's shown for the cycle parking is acceptable in this particular instance.
Could you show us on the plan, please?
Yeah, cycle parking is proposed in sort of this area here. Get this to work. Yes, this sort of area here. So you'll use this pedestrian access over Shupin Road into the area of cycle parking. In terms of the Councillor Chillingworth raised the issue of the land to the north of the site. The application site isn't used for lorries. The lorry parking is on the land to the north of the site, and also an area for normal car parking, and that will remain. That is long stay parking for both overnight for vehicles and for car parking as well. The application does include parking, as you can see on the slide. There's also a number of disabled parking spaces, which is these spaces here, and that one, and that one, and then on this side, that space there. So they are designated for disabled parking. The access to the site, if you're coming by Park and Ride, which is located, stop is in Middleborough here, involves crossing over the road at the pedestrian crossing and then going under the underpass and then accessing the site here, although obviously there's a further underpass at this point here where you can then access North Station, so it is possible to walk to the site and use the various underpasses. Obviously the octagon in the middle does make it a slightly less direct route, but the bus stops, obviously bus stops at the bottom of North Hill and the Park and Ride in Middleborough as well. I mean, the Park and Ride, I think, to answer the point that Councillor Moore raised, is for commuters and for tourists. It's not simply a Park and Ride for tourists, and obviously be likely to be a slightly difference in timing of when they're used, but it is obviously to encourage commuters to use the Park and Ride as well as tourists as well. Condition number 3 deals with archaeology. There has been an initial report, but our archaeologist, as you rightly say, is a site where there's potential for archaeology, so that is controlled by condition 3. And I think, hopefully, that answers all the questions. If not, I'm happy to answer any I've missed.
I may have misinterpreted Councillor Moore, but I think she was talking about the coach parking that is, or lorry parking that is behind the Shupin Road site currently. That's where tourist coaches drop people off in town, then they go and they park there for the day, and then they pick the tourists up later. I think that's what she was referring to with tourists. Is that correct?
Sorry, I misunderstood you. The area where the coaches park and the lorries park isn't affected by this application, so that will continue as it does at the moment.
Okay, I've got 2 more councillors. Councillor Hayes and then Councillor Chillingworth.
Yes, I merely wanted to provide what might be described as a point of information, since I know that area very well, having walked around it a lot, and it's that the site in question is used just for car parking, and small vans, a large vehicle couldn't get in, and it was suffering from sort of boy racer types at night who are whizzing around and causing a lot of grief to the residents until sort of concrete lips were installed to spoil their fun and presumably their axles and tyres and things, so they stopped doing that, but it isn't ideal as a car park, I would have thought.
Councillor Chillingworth.
Yes, thank you. Mrs Jackson's answered the question I think I have, that she didn't mention coach parking, but I understand will still remain, plus the long-term lorry park. That just remains the loss of long-term car parking. And I wondered if we can pass a message down to the parking partnership to see if they can make any arrangements for long-term car parking in the multi-storey just around the corner.
I can actually remember Councillor Chillingworth, as just a point of information, sitting on a scrutiny panel a few years ago now, where we discussed the long-term parking strategy. And I remember this site was always going to be one that was going to be closed because it was felt that there was more than enough long-term parking around the town in general. And it was felt that with the park and ride we should be encouraging people who are going to be in Colchester all day to use that, as opposed to coming in and parking within the town, trying to relieve some of the congestion around Westway, and that was something that was that went through our scrutiny panel. I can't remember the exact year, but Mrs Jackson, if you've got anything else to add.
Well, no, I think you've made the point. Obviously, the sort of the parking strategy is to really to reduce the amount of trips into the town centre, particularly the sort of long-term trips, to encourage people to use the park and ride. But the car, I will just say, the car park to the north does include an element of area that's available for car parking. It's not just coaches and lorries, so that there is that will still remain as long-term parking.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm reassured.
I'm sorry, we can't take questions from the public. Okay, I have no more councillors to speak. I do have a proposal. Yeah, thank you. It all went there. A proposal from Councillor Scott. It was seconded by Councillor Jarvis that we accept the recommendations according to the amendment sheet and anything in the report. There was the question of the additional parking, the bicycle parking being up to the level of Essex County policy, and is it?
Yes, it is. I think the issue was the location of it rather than the number of spaces, so that the parking that's proposed does meet the Essex County standard in terms of number of cycle parking provision.
Okay. Anything else before we go to the vote? Councillor Hayes?
Well, I would like the condition I suggested to be included because clearly somebody from the Colchester cycling campaign does have an issue with whether the cycling provision is as good as it could be, and it would be very desirable if the architects and yourself and the planning department could perhaps get your heads together and see if it could be improved. So I would like that condition added.
Okay, Councillor Scott, are you still happy to have that condition on there? Councillor Jarvis, you're still seconding? Okay, all those in favour?
Chairman, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. That's unanimous.
Okay. Okay, we're now going to move on to item 7.3, and Eleanor Moss will be presenting.
Thank you, Chair. So members will be familiar with this site from the site visit earlier today. The application site is lined in red on this plan you can see in front of you. The proposal is for a detached gable fronting dwelling, providing 3 bedrooms, 2 off-road car parking spaces and also 2 off-road car parking spaces for the host dwelling of 39 Harvey Crescent. As you can see on this plan here, the existing dwellings within this area are all of the same design, style, type, age, and there's strong building lines. There are no detached properties within this area, and there are no gable fronting properties within this area. The proposal, you can see from the site plan, is the one on the bottom left. Probably a bit better. The 2 car parking spaces are adjacent to the dwellings. As you can see from here, it's stepped back from the main building line and the gable is almost facing directly onto the opposite dwelling. These are the proposed site elevations. As you can tell from the earlier site visit, this is not in keeping with the existing style of the dwellings within this cul-de-sac. This is the site as it is. As you can see to the left, that is the garage site, and on the right is the render building of 39 Harvey Crescent. That is the garage site again. That is the properties to the rear of the site and also the footpath on the left. That is the end of 39 Harvey Crescent. That is the opposite dwelling which the proposal gable faces onto. The site again. These are the rows of terrace houses within Harvey Crescent. As you can see, all the eaves are parallel to the highway. They're all the same type, design, all of the windows are directly under the eaves, and all of the same age. This is a terrace row of houses. 39 is the only exception to the design in the area, which is of render construction instead of the typical brick. And you can just see to the left there, that is the undeveloped space where the proposal is sited. There are 2 undeveloped sites within the corners which penetrate this quite intimate layout and provide much needed gaps. That's another row of the terrace houses, and that's another row. And that's where the access to the site would be, which is quite small. And that is the site again. That's looking out from the public footpath. The recommendation is for refusal due to its design and impact on the street scene because it is not in keeping.
Okay, call Mr. Pomrey, please. I believe you've done this before.
Good evening, my name is Robert Pomrey, I'm a Chartered Town Planner. Officers clearly do not support development on this site. Unusually perhaps they make it clear, and in their words crystal clear. However, what is not crystal clear is precisely why they have an aversion to development here. Previous rejections have shaped this proposal. It fully complies with all the planning policy requirements for parking, garden size, privacy, overshadowing and amenity. It is disappointing that officers have failed to specifically inform you of that fact. Where there is a policy agreement, it is specific to the character of the area. Officers advise that the area is characterised by traditional dwellings and their uniform, mirrored, intimate layout. Similar points are made regarding the consistency of plot sizes, height, design and materials. Therefore, you may ask yourselves, how far from this character is the proposal? well, the height, the width, the design, the materials are all generally the same, and deliberately so. You may also ask, is the area really so uniform? Well, I don't think so. Some owners have added porches, some retain a front garden, others use their front garden to park cars, there are extensions and different boundary treatments. Therefore, can it truly be said that this proposal would disrupt this rhythm and character to an extent where it will be truly harmful? I don't believe so. The people who live in the area do not share the officers' views. 5 representations were received, including from the parish council. All support the proposal. No one has objected. Officers choose not to summarise this support. All representations received on other applications on the agenda include a summary of the comments. In this case, members are directed to the website. So what have the neighbours said? Well, they say the proposed development can only enhance what is a waste patch of land. All the necessary requirements seem to have been met. I cannot understand why this application could not be approved. The proposal can only add value to the area. In this shortage of homes, it will provide value in every way. It would be wrong of me to say that the proposal was perfect in every respect. However, there are no conflicts or compromises with regard to key planning policy requirements. In determining such applications, one must exercise a planning balance and decide whether the harm will be greater to develop than to not. Members have seen the site, they will have hopefully read the local support, and they will no doubt exercise the planning balance for themselves. If there is a modicum of harm, it is minor and greatly outweighed by the benefits of the development. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go back to Ms Moss to respond, please.
Thank you. Officers don't dispute that this area is sustainable. However, I have given a strong line in both my pre-app on this application and the report in front of members today that the site is not suitable for a dwelling, especially one of this style and nature. And also, while we do appreciate that the site is untidy at the moment, the council has other means within its powers to serve notice on this site to remain tidy. I have checked with our planning enforcement team and environmental protection. Unfortunately, no complaints have been received about an untidy site, and therefore whether it is a wasteland is disputed. It was sold to the applicant from Colchester Borough Council, and it was sold on the device that it was to be a garden and was heavily covenanted to ensure that it remained a garden. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Sykes, you called this in, so if you'd like to have first go as ward councillor and then Councillor Scott Patel as the other ward councillor.
Thank you. I called this application in because of the inconsistencies. This has been going around for quite a few years, and I have got involved. And I have met with Andrew Tyrrell and Sally Harrington some months ago to discuss this, and at no time was I told that this couldn't be developed, right? But clearly in the agenda it's not for development. I was told at that meeting that if another application come in, then on advice to call it in, that way it would be heard at committee instead of under delegated powers. Right, I have some letters here that I'd like to refer to, dating back to May 27th, 2014, and Carl Allen was the case officer then. And under site context considerations, Carl has reported this site has been analysed. The result of this is that the site is suitable for development, although some small changes need to be made to the scheme. He goes on to say the site is in the physical limits where dwellings are decided. The principle could be supported by officers, although some detail need to be reconsidered. A better solution for one dwelling rather than two. So this has been mooted about. There's been a couple of applications. There's been a lot of work done on this, and to be fair, I know there's been a lot of planning officers' time. Today, on the site visit, I did find the planning officer's tone rather fierce, as though this is it. There's no discussion for this. I feel this may not be quite the design to fit in this location. But there is no street scene. As you come into Harvey Crescent, you've got 2 blocks of 3-storey flats on either side, Colchester Borough homes. In the road, which has always been tight for parking, right, you've got front properties that have got hedges, some have got fences, some are open plan and car parking, some have got additional porches. We've already seen 39 isn't brick, it's rendered, so you've got a difference there. I have spoken to some of the residents because on a regular basis I clean that folly, and I know what's dumped in that garden, and over a period of years there has been dumping done, and I know residents want to see something there, right? Again, while I perhaps think this needs tweaking, I would like to see a development on that site, and I feel it needs it. I'll open it up to the rest of the committee.
I think that's normally my job. Councillor Scott-Patel.
I would like to speak on this, however I want to hear what the committee's debate first, and then I would like to come back and speak later, if that's okay.
Okay, who would like to have a go? Councillor Chillingworth.
Just a quick one. The covenants that you mentioned, is that a planning, material planning consideration?
It is not a material planning consideration, but it's worth noting that these covenants were imposed by Colchester Borough Council.
I'm going to have a go first, then Councillor Moore, then Councillor Hayes, if that's okay. Just a question on the parking. What is the total parking for the 2 sites? Because they're both in the ownership of one person, I would be very interested to know, because I think they would need 5 parking spaces, because 2.25 times 2 is 4.5, which rounds up mathematically, therefore there must be 5 for room for a visitor.
There are 4 car parking spaces proposed on site for that includes 39 Harvey Crescent and the proposed dwelling. They're in tandem. I can try and zoom in a bit. Oh. No. No, that hasn't worked. They are in tandem, but there is a total of 4.
Okay, so that would be one below what should be expected. Councillor Moore, I think you were next, then Councillor Hayes.
Yes, I agree that I think the design of the building that's being proposed is perhaps not right for this site. In fact, it's definitely not right for this site, because it would be so much better if the ridge was turned through 90 degrees, so that at least you've got a reflection of the character of the other buildings. And I'm sure that could be done with a bit of creative work, perhaps having an archway and the parking behind in the garden, so they went through behind. I'm sure something clever could be done. Architects are wonderful. It would have to be an improvement on what is there now, regardless of the fact that the site is not kept clean and nice. The view through to the back of the garages and the buildings beyond is not good at all. In fact, it's very ugly, and ugly ugly scenes encourage ugly behaviour. I personally think this would be much better with a nicely designed dwelling on it. And I would propose that we defer this for it to come back with a better design.
We've got Councillor Hayes.
When I was reading the report, I saw that there was a reference to the previous applications which had been refused. So I had a look at the 2014 planning application, and I saw that there was a long and closely reasoned objection from the occupiers of number 43, Harvey Crescent. And I then looked at the consultation list for this application, and I was very disappointed to see that the occupiers of number 43 had not been consulted, and I'm very unhappy at the statement that's been made by Councillor Sykes that the residents are in support, because it would be astonishing if the residents of number 43 had done a complete volte-face in the course of less than a year, and they only live about 3 doors away. I, at the moment, see no good reason to differ from the officer's assessment, because it does seem to me there's a street scene here. I mean, just because it's perhaps not the most expensive housing in Colchester, that doesn't mean they're not entitled to a decent street scene and to have matters of design and have some greenery and light, just as any other residents would expect. And frankly, I don't think it's very impressive when an applicant is sold land, knows that land is aimed as garden land, and then lets it become a dumping ground, and then sort of uses that as a reason for getting a valuable planning permission. So at the moment, I'm not inclined to overturn the planning officer's recommendation.
Councillor Gamble.
Thank you, Chair. I'm inclined to agree with Councillor Hayes. I didn't go on the site visit, and so what I can say about the application is what I read in the report and the photographs, and I recognise that's comparatively limited. But it seems to me that this is an overgrown site, and why haven't the owners been perhaps served a Section 215 to clear it up under planning enforcement? And no wish to be too controversial, but isn't that a fair point?
It's always nice to have a former chair of the planning committee here. Councillor Scott.
Just 2 things. First of all, I don't think we should reward people for derelicting their gardens so that anything would be an improvement on it. And secondly, I would like to commend Case Officer Eleanor Moss for her very well researched and clear presentation this afternoon. I'm not inclined to criticise any kind of tone. I think it was excellent. And therefore, with those, having made those points, I would also like to agree with Councillor Hayes that we should go with the recommendations presented.
Councillor Jarvis.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Having been on the site visit today, I would say that this particular patch of land there is crying out for some kind of development that would enhance the street sign. At the moment, in the current state it's in, it certainly detracts from the street scene. There's a lot of rubbish on there, bicycles, garden waste and what have you. I don't think it would be out of keeping to have some form of development, not necessarily to this particular design and application here, but maybe an extension at the side of some sort. But I tend to agree with Councillor Sykes that this is an area that could be usefully improved, providing a residential site, and I I personally would be in favour of a development rather than a refusal. Thank you.
Councillor Hazel, could I remind all committee members just to keep to the application that's in front of us and not what may be, otherwise we go into the realms of designing on the hoof. Councillor Hazel, you're next to speak, sorry. I should have done it the other way round.
Actually, I didn't indicate to speak, but I will say one or two things if you like. I tend to go along with Councillor Sykes and Councillor Jarvis that something needs to be done on that site. It is a very large plot of land, perhaps to maintain as garden, and I just think the right building on that site would actually improve greatly, and I'm not overly fussed about the design, but I'm happy to sort of defer to other people who have perhaps a better perspective, but I go along with allowing the development. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor McLean.
Just a note regarding the nice green open space. I think there was something mentioned this afternoon by the officer that they should actually have that fence 2 metres high, or something they could fence it. So that could actually be shut off to everybody and look a lot worse. And I think we need to be very careful what we're wishing for here.
Okay, kind of comes down to me now. I'm kind of not either way with this one. I can understand why members might feel that a development is correct on this area. I think that if you were to put a house in that area or a development in that area, you are in danger of making that quite a long and quite a dark little alleyway, which can be problematic. I think there's a bit of a red herring regarding the tidiness of the site. As Councillor Gamble has said, a section 215 could be placed onto that site, which would require the owner to tidy it up and keep it neat. I think was it a 2-foot fence that had to go around? I don't quite buy that. That would look awful. 2 metre. So yeah, okay, 2 metre garden fence. That would possibly have the same effect of making the alleyway darker. So there's kind of a two-way thing there. The question has been raised about deferral. I think if it was minor tweaks in the design, I think I would be possibly towards that. However, I think that it actually, to be acceptable in design terms, to my mind, I think it would need a major overhaul, and I think by just deferring it, we're sort of in a situation where it'll be one little change after another little change after another little change, and we could be spending an awful lot of time and effort, and for the applicant we'll be spending money on it because we might be giving them a false impression. So I'm minded at the moment to support refusal on this application. I am concerned that it was quite a tight parking area and there is not enough parking on that site, so that would have to be something that would need to be sorted out. I would have to see a visitor space. And that's kind of where I'm situated at the moment. Okay, well, councillors, actually, if we go back to the officer and then we'll go back out to the councillors.
So going back, there is a covenant on site regarding a fence to be erected. Obviously from the site visit you saw that this wasn't the case, and also the covenants regarding maintenance, and there's to be no vehicle access pretty much in the whole of the red-lined area in order to protect residents from noise and disturbance.
Okay, Councillor Gamble mentioned about a section 215. Mr Till, did you want to take this one? I'm sorry, we can't accept anything other than the one per speaker, thank you.
Yes, a 215 notice is what we'd commonly refer to as an untidy sites notice. So basically, if we think that the site got to a position where it was causing harm, we can serve a site notice specifying measures that would need to then be undertaken to make the site tidy. And while I'm on it might just be worth covering the background to this application, because I think it might help members make their minds up. Councillor Sykes has said that she came to see myself and Sally Harrington a while back. I would say that we did make it clear that we couldn't see a way that the site could be made to work at that point, and that's also been made clear to the applicant and to the agent. We've had that escalated for being looked at several levels through the council, and that's audit trailed in correspondence between myself and Mr Pomeroy both before that meeting and after that meeting. So I think we'd made our position clear that we've actually spent quite a lot of time looking into this to see if we could make it work after previous applications, and the point we got to is yes, in principle the site looks big enough to develop, but we haven't yet seen a scheme or been able to try and work a scheme in the office that we could find that ticked all of the boxes as far as we were concerned. So it's just getting it to a level where officers thought that it was acceptable, and whatever you changed and played around with, as I say, to date we've not found one that we've been comfortable with.
Okay, Councillor Sykes, then Councillor Chillingworth.
Carl Allen, clearly in paperwork, did say that he approved this, but he would take it back to the planning surgery. The planning surgery looked at it, and whilst some of the officers said no to it, there was one that wavered. I've got the information here in paper form. Regarding lighting, if you walk down the folly, you would have noticed that there's two lamps in the folly, one that would be alongside the fencing and one a bit further up. There's no problem of light there. To me, I think for the applicant to have another look at this, and I do feel, as discussed, the roof line needs to be in line with what's existing. You can never mirror image the other corner of Harvey Crescent, where there's been a garage built there. There is no real public folly there. This folly is well used. At some point, the garages at Winstry Court have already been discussed about building, so there'll be a change in the street scene round there anyway. And I do think to dismiss this for no development is wrong.
Councillor Chillingworth.
Thank you, Chairman. I think it's a bit of a red herring to be too concerned about the state of the site at the moment. There can be various reasons why that happens. I think we should consider the true planning matters. That also applies to the covenants, although I understand why the covenants were imposed in the first place. I must say the other corner where a garage is being built is very attractive. I think I can't see why there couldn't be a solution like that arrived at for this corner as well, and still have the folly. It would provide a large garden at the back. Some people do like large gardens, and I don't think that is in any way a problem with the site if it was managed properly. I understand how officers have been exercised, shall we say, by this proposal, and in some ways, I agree with those of my colleagues who cast some doubt on the refusal on the street scene. But I do understand that officers have spent a lot of time going through this, and I think on that basis I would go along with their proposed refusal.
Okay, Councillor Scott Patel, followed by Councillor Hazel, followed by Councillor Hayes.
Thank you. I understand that the issues that the planning officer has raised regarding the property design not being in keeping with the street scene. However, as mentioned before, there is a housing shortage and the land use for the area is for residential use only. Therefore, I would support that we defer this application to give the applicant the time to submit a design more in keeping with the street scene.
Councillor Hazel.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'd like to bring up the point about the house on the other end of that terrace, which also has a larger garden, which has been very attractively developed. But actually, the sites are not symmetrical. I mean, I looked at it, and I thought, I'm trying to see where the house on the other side had put their garage and so on. But it's a different shape, and it's a different size. And I think the one that we're discussing now is a much bigger plot. And I really do think it's not beyond the wit of planning officers and the architects to come up with a decent design. And we were told this afternoon about the covenants not being allowed cars to go across the pavement. Well, we have that everywhere. Dropped curbs for houses. I mean, it's everywhere, and I really do not see why this area, when you consider how many properties are crammed in so many ways, in so many areas across the borough, that here we have a site that is perfectly capable of taking a property, and the house on the other end of the terrace, you can't tell. I mean, we're talking about open spaces, but there's no open space on the other side. It's completely, totally enclosed by garage, fences, and all the rest of it. So it has no amenity for anybody else. So in a way, why should the owner of number 93 provide green spaces and open spaces for other people? So on balance, I go for recommendation for this to be deferred back to the planners for them to come up with a better way forward. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Hayes.
Yes, with the marvels of iPads, I am actually able to look at the extract from the Ordnance Survey and can see that the garden adjacent to the house at the other end of this little terrace is actually approximately similar size to the garden, the total garden available to number 39, which is really what we're talking about here, the blue and the red together. So I don't really buy this, that the size of it is particularly different. I wanted to speak just to ask again about this question of the requirement to fence the plot, 2-metre fence, because I mean, unless it's a unless the requirement is that it be a close-boarded fence and not, for example, railings, I don't really understand why it would make the alley dark or anything like that, nor am I convinced that that's a planning reason, but I just really wanted to ask, couldn't it just be some sort of post and rail fence or chain link fence or railings along there? In which case residents, if this garden land was used as it should be, they'd be walking past an attractive piece of garden instead of something that's now just been neglected.
Okay, I'm going to go back to the officers and then we'll have a last go round if people want to have a go.
Yes, so the description within the covenants just states that a fence should be erected. There's no further interpretation of the word fence. So there could be different designs. It doesn't mean that it has to be boarded up. The word is just fence.
Okay, Councillor Hayes wanted to come back. Is there anyone else?
Yeah, sorry. Just a quick comment. We actually Googled Earth and we came up with a different picture than the one obviously Councillor Hayes has.
Oh, technology. Okay, we have a proposal that this is deferred. I can't remember who proposed it. It was Councillor Moore. It was seconded, I believe, by Councillor Hazel. Now, if we're going to defer it, we probably need to think, what do we want the officers to come back with? Can I just ask Andrew Tyrrell, is that something that's within the remit of officers to do?
Well, it would be for Mr. Pomeroy as the agent to try and come up with a alternative suggestion. I mean, it might be helpful for him to have some pointers in the right direction. If you know what as to general things that the committee were hoping to achieve that the current scheme doesn't, for example. I mean, if you went for the most in-keeping house, it would be to put one attached to number 39, but then it would be impossible to get parking on the site. So it's questions as to what compromise. I mean, this is the issue that we've always had, is whatever you do, there's a compromise somewhere. So it's what's the most important thing? Is it the visual appearance of the dwelling? Is it the parking standards? And I think, to be fair to Mr. Pomeroy, you know, we've had lots of discussions about this, and we've seen several versions of the scheme. So for him to be able to go off and to work something up for the applicant, we really need a little bit more of a steer as to what are the criteria that need to be met before it comes back to the planning committee, really.
Councillor Moore, I think you wanted to have a say. Then we've got Councillor Scott, Councillor Sykes, Councillor Chillingworth, Councillor McLean.
Well, I would give my opportunity to speak to Councillor Sykes, who has some fairly good ideas of how it could be done.
Councillor Scott.
Have we not got a proposal also to reject the proposal as in line with the officer's recommendation?
I believe we have. I don't know if it's been seconded yet.
Chairman, I'm not aware that there was another proposal. There was lots of intimations as to what people were feeling and their views, but I'm not aware of another proposal that was formally seconded.
Councillor Scott has formally proposed, and Councillor Hayes has, I believe, formally seconded. So we now have that application on the proposal on the table as well. Councillor Sykes.
I'd like the applicant to be given one last chance to get this right, and I'm sure he will, with advice from planning. I think the roof line needs to be in keeping with what we've got. I wondered whether you could do like a mews type property with the top part of the property abutting the existing wall, to do like a mews which parking could go back, and that parking could apply for both properties. That would be 2 car spaces going back. You could then perhaps have one each on the front. We've passed applications where we haven't met the complete parking standards, and we're going to have it before us again, even on big developments. So I don't see that as a reason for refusal. I think we should give the applicant one last bite at this because of the inconsistencies, and there definitely has been, because when an officer tells you that he thinks it should be approved, them words stick with you. No matter what comes after, there's been that approval has been mentioned. So anything else gets lost because you think, well, someone said it could be approved. And I think, to be fair, we need to give this one last try.
Councillor Chillingworth and Councillor McLean.
Yes, on the basis that perhaps the deferral was approved, you did ask for ideas, and I think my idea perhaps is similar to Councillor Sykes's. We want to overcome the problem of the street scene, I think. And obviously the roof lines want to be in line. But if you were to set a detached house back, say the depth of the existing house, would that overcome the problem? Because you could have parking in front and you would still have an amenity space at the back. And because the line was similar to the others in the street, would that overcome the street scene problem? I know we can't design on the hoof here, and I accept that, but that might be something that could be discussed if it was a decision to defer.
Councillor McLean has now indicated she no longer wishes to speak. Is there anything you wish to come back with, Mr. Tyrrell? Okay, I'm going to put it to committee that we have a proposal on the table that we defer for a redesign of the property to make it fit with our policy, or to make it acceptable to our policy. All those in favour?
Chairman, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 in favour.
All those against?
Chairman, that's 1, 2, 3, 4 against.
Okay, so that is deferred. Okay, we're going to move on to 7.4. This is 48A, William Harris Way, Colchester. And it is Eleanor Moss again.
So members will be familiar with this application because the original scheme came in just under a year ago. The proposal is for a change of use to a takeaway, and this includes the erection of a flue at the rear of the property. The only difference between this scheme and the original scheme is brick effect cladding on the proposed flue. It's worth noting that the previous submission was refused by this committee and it was also dismissed at appeal. However, both of those reasons were for design alone. The appeal decision pretty much set in stone the principle of having a takeaway in this area and did not raise any concerns regarding noise, smell or fire risk, and therefore members are asked to judge this on design reasons alone. So this would be looking sideways on to the stairwell. The bottom left demonstrates the brick effect cladding, which is to match the existing in the same as colour and texture on site. This is the proposed shop front, which members did not raise an objection to during the original scheme. This is a view of the flue from the rear. This one demonstrates best how the original scheme came in. You can pretty much see the outline of the proposed flue, which was metal utilitarian in appearance. And this is what is before us today. This is the photo montage of the proposed brick effect. As you can see, it matches the colour and texture of the existing brick on site. just a photo of the front of the area, which demonstrates the short-term parking. Some other units on site. And this is the rear of the site where the proposed flue and brick effect cladding is to be erected. Thank you.
Okay, could I call Edwina Taylor, please? Okay, you've seen how it's done? 3 minutes, the bell will go after 2. Time will start when you press the button.
Okay, good evening. I'm actually quite disappointed that I find myself sitting here once again fighting for our case on the Solus estate. None of us on the estate are opposed for the unit to be occupied. It's been nearly 10 years now that the unit has remained empty. And obviously clearly needs to be occupied. The flue, that picture, thank you for keeping that one up. I live on the middle floor of the middle block. There's 3 blocks, and the middle door is, the white middle door is our entry door to the block. The flue is directly above our entry, and it goes, whilst it's on the stair core, it actually is parallel to our kitchen and bathroom windows. Notwithstanding the fact that it's clad in brick effect material, it's still going to be unsightly. I know odour is not a problem, so I hear that you're not supposed to be considering odour, but this is our home, this is where we live. I actually don't object to an A3, A5 status being granted to the unit, but not for a catering business that requires such heavy-duty extraction and flue. The owners of the shop, the convenience store, are Turkish, and they have shown interest in the said unit and are very happy and actually quite excited of being able to open that unit as a Turkish coffee shop. So like a coffee shop that we would find in Costa or Starbucks, but with a bit of a twist. So it could actually be the first Turkish coffee shop in this country, and all the fireworks are going off. We live here. We don't want a takeaway of this nature. Kebabs, fish and chips, it's going to be quite horrible. And the flue, notwithstanding the fact that it's clad in brick, it's going to have to be maintained. It's going to need a tower to get to the hatches, the access hatches. It's just going to be quite unpleasant for everybody. And so I would just ask the council, the committee, to give due consideration to what I have brought to you tonight. That we do live there, we do want to see the unit open, and perhaps you could consider an A3, A5 status being granted, but without the flue. So
Okay, it's your time up. I hope you've got just about everything you need to say. Could you just turn it off for me? Thank you. Okay, now have Councillor Harris, who's very welcome as a visiting councillor. You have 5 minutes, the bill will go after 4.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you so much, sir. And I'm always well received at these committee meetings, so thank you very much for giving me the time to speak on this. The first thing I want to say, really, strongly, is that I thank the officers, Eleanor and James and the team, for all the work they're putting over this applicants in the various iterations we've got to being here. It takes an awful lot of time to get there, and thanks for the detailed report. It's very helpful. That said, of course, I am supporting the idea of refusing this on the grounds that this is not the rear of this property, it's the front door of these people's properties. This is where these people live. All those flats there, you can call it the rear, and that this architecturally not the front of the building. No, it's not, but it's their front door. That's the only way they can get access to these premises, is through those doors. And to put a what I would call a pig's ear and you can call it a silk purse if you wish, but I don't, up the side of that building. It is what it is. It was refused at appeal, so the right decision was made. Utilitarian or not, this is still a utilitarian, it's just painted a different colour. Those windows are not just windows, they're people's homes. Those doors are not just doors, they're people's front doors to their home. And I'm quite passionate about the fact that these residents here who live in this estate are not, repeat not, and you heard it from Edwina, they're not adverse to having businesses. In fact, they're actively encouraging businesses to come in there. They're looking for people to come and fill those last 2 shops there, Chair. They're keen to have that there, and Edwina has already researched the Turkish gentleman who runs the convenience store, who's quite excited about the fact that if this gets refused, that he can open a business there. Not a material consideration here for you tonight, but it's something that I keep a weather eye on because I'm a good counsellor and like to know that businesses are succeeding. So as far as I'm concerned, having that flue at the back of those flats by the kitchen and bedroom windows above their doors is still not acceptable. It's the wrong thing, and I really are supporting my residents in that. The chair of the Residents Association is sunning himself in some far off from shore, otherwise he'd been here tonight as well. So he's probably on a sun lounger somewhere while I'm speaking, and the fireworks are going off, but he would be echoing what I'm saying here. People are quite passionate about this. They're not for this, but they want what I would call the village scene at the front there, with these shops open. A wonderful front that the officers show you there. Those shops would be wonderful. And you've got a nursery there, you've got a barber's, you've got a convenience store. I'd love a candlestick maker and a butcher and a baker there. But you know, whatever that comes, it comes. But not this style of takeaway. I won't go any further than that, Chair, except to say, please, my final appeal, and I hope the applicant will go away again after we've done this and rethink about the A3 that Edwina said. But as far as I'm concerned, I please ask you, implore you on behalf of the residents who live in those windows, who behind those glass doors there, to turn this down. Thank you very much for hearing me.
Okay, if I go back to the officer.
If I just go back to the picture of the photo montage, I think this is probably the most useful one. There was comments that it is unsightly, however you'd have to judge this from the original submission and whether it's moved on far enough to blend in harmoniously with what I would consider the rear of the site. It's classed as the rear of the site because obviously the shop is at the front and therefore this is classed as the rear. It's considered that this does blend in with the existing street scene and certainly isn't quite as stark in appearance as the original scheme. Unfortunately, it's been noted about odour and maintenance. As with all flues, you'd have to maintain them, and the maintenance will ensure that issues such as smell are reduced, and therefore maintenance is essential, but that is something that's with all flues. It's considered that this is actually quite tucked away and isn't overbearing on the rear of the property, and I'd just like to state again that the appeal did establish in principle the use of A3, A5 use, and therefore we could only discuss this application on design grounds alone, which is why it's recommended for approval, because it's considered that this has overcome the original design concerns from the original scheme.
Councillor Gamble, then Councillor Chillingworth, then Councillor Jarvis, then Councillor Hayes.
Thank you. I'd like to thank the resident for attending and congratulate her on her eloquence, because she was clearly speaking on behalf of other residents too. Councillor Harris doesn't need my compliments. He gets enough already. But he has also obviously put the case. I have to say straight away, I would dearly love to find a reason to turn this down. In my own ward, we have issues with takeaways. they never seem to they always seem to be problems, and these problems are ongoing, whether it smells or whether it's the door left open when it's a condition that it should close and so on. But we're only looking at design, and I don't know what other people feel about this, but I'd have to say that I think this looks fine. I therefore cannot find a good planning reason for refusal. If somebody can come up with one, a genuinely good planning reason, then they're probably knocking on an open door with me. But I suspect that we're not going to be able to, because the appeal inspector has chipped away at all the other issues, and we're just left, as the planning officer has said, with the design issue, and I think that looks okay personally. Thank you.
Councillor Chillingworth.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, Councillor Gamble has said much of what I was going to say, particularly with regard to the speakers, which is very articulate and well put. Unfortunately, we are in a situation where most of it has been decided, really. The inspector found that the change of use was acceptable, and that the only issue was the appearance of this flue, which we thought was absolutely appalling when we first saw it a year or so ago. But the new proposal obviously has hugely improved it, and I can't honestly see a reason for refusal on the basis of design. I feel that the objectors will find that it is acceptable themselves in due course, although they may not see it now. Apart from the maintenance, which will perhaps happen once a year, I suppose, with scaffolding, I find it very hard to find a reason like Councillor Gamble to refuse this. Thank you.
Councillor Jarvis.
Thank you, Chair. When this first came forward and we had the site visit, I think we all agreed it was very unsightly and totally out of keeping with the residential properties there. I certainly don't think the people who bought those properties anticipated an industrial flue running up alongside the core of the building. My problem now is first of all, I don't think that the cladding will look anything as merging into the colour of the brickwork that it's shown there on that image there. I think it will be very different to that in reality. My concern is the top of the flue there, which is only 1 metre above the gutter in there. And on the site visit we had before, both those windows were open. The people who occupied those rooms there, they had their windows open, as are the windows on that staircase. And I think it's inevitable that the fumes that are coming out of that flue will drift through into those windows on both sides. I think it's completely inappropriate to have this industrial flue alongside this building in a residential area. It wasn't anticipated, and I think the main effect of this is the nuisance of the extracted fumes that are coming out of the top into those rooms there. I think is totally unacceptable, and I will continue to object to this application.
Councillor Hayes.
Some years ago now, I lived in a block of flats in London, and the freeholder, who was always keen to maximise his revenues, wanted a McDonald's type operation in the premises below my flat, and I objected on the grounds that there was no adequate waste storage or disposal arrangements. And it was rejected. There was an appeal. The inspector came to my flat, looked out the window, and agreed with me that the waste storage and disposal arrangements were totally inadequate. And I cannot understand why it was previously not refused on that basis. I think that takeaway. I mean, there are a number of takeaways in the town centre, my ward, and they cause a lot of coming and going. They cause a lot of coming and going with people delivering, with cardboard boxes piling up, with grease running out of bins, making the pavement stained and black and greasy, with vermin. And I propose to, I would like to ask the officer to comment on my observations, but at the moment I am minded very much to refuse it on the basis that I think it's the waste storage is inadequate. And I note that the inspector said that the council had not raised concerns regarding waste storage provision. I wasn't on the committee last year, or whenever it came before the committee before, but I am now, and that is my opinion as best I can form it at the moment.
Councillor Hazel.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I was on the planning committee when we visited this before. We were actually, from my memory, assured that the waste facilities would be adequate, although actually we all doubted it, and I doubted it then and I doubt it now. I doubt when that is actually built. We have no real... We can't really tell how big it is. Is it going to be 2 feet wide, 2 feet deep? It's going to be quite a large piece of equipment. I also agree with Councillor Jarvis. At the time, it was also the smells going through, because the wind goes in different directions and the smell is going to drift. And also maintenance. What happens if there is something goes wrong and they have to start dismantling the thing and then building it back up again? Will it actually reduce noise, or will it actually increase noise? Will the fact that it's clad in brick allow that whatever's going on inside it to rattle and roll and make even more noise? And so again, for me, I'm with the residents. I would refuse this application. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Moore.
Thank you. Yes, on design matters, I'm with Councillor Jarvis that that looks all very pretty in the picture, but in fact it's not going to be brick, it's going to be brick effect, which means it will not weather in the same way that the building weathers, and they will, even if they look the same when they start out, they soon will not look the same. The other thing that nobody seems to have picked up on is the fact that horizontal section at the bottom, a good shower of rain, it's going to be cascading off there, fairly close to people where they want to go into their front door. You start putting rainwater, gutters and one thing on there, and then it doesn't look like something that's disappearing into the background. It looks like something that's sticking out like a sore thumb. No, I'm afraid I'm for turning this down, because even on design matters, it's not good enough. I would also like to ask, where are these waste bins? Because premises like this have a lot of waste. It looks very much as they might be wanting to store them outside what is somebody else's front door, with all the associated problems of waste. I think, well, I would turn it down on the design of the chimney, but the other things are something to be taken into account. Thank you.
Councillor Lilly, Councillor Scott.
Excuse me. Thank you, Chair. I totally agree with Councillor Jarvis. When we visited this site last year, the flue was actually atrocious, but one of the main causes then was the fact the chimney was very close to the window line, which it is now. So it's disappointing that they haven't actually raised it further, because there will be a problem with vapours, and even though it's not planned consideration, but it will be consideration for the neighbours when they have to phone up the environmental people all the time, and they come out, take measurements, so on, and then the roller coaster starts from there. It should be much higher, so therefore the design is faulty, and we can turn it down on the fact that the design isn't right for this area. I think also, as others have said, this looks great at the moment, but when it comes to build it, it'll only be a brick effect. There'll be a huge metal thing inside. Will the outside shell amplify all the noise inside with the smoke and the fumes coming out? But the residents, they appreciate living there, and they brought it there because they knew there were going to be shops there. But they didn't realise they were going to build a huge, almighty, ugly, stinking flue outside or in the back of their properties. And I think on those grounds, it is a really good case to be turned down again. Thank you.
Interestingly put, Councillor Lee. Councillor Scott.
It's been covered, thank you. I'm going to vote against the stinking flue.
Councillor Gamble, you wanted to come back?
Well, first of all, a question of the officers. Can we, in any way, revisit what the appeal inspector has already taken a view on, such as the storage of waste and so on. I did say that it wouldn't take a lot for me. It's knocking on an open door for me to vote against this. And I have to say that I have heard a number of points made, good points. Don't particularly agree about the look of the chimney, but I certainly take the point about the chimney stack, and I would question the officers whether or not there wouldn't be, and I'd have thought it was quite obvious there would be, problems for the people in the top floor where that window is very close to the stack. And there's also another window, actually. I don't know if that's into a communal area on the left-hand side. But it's this issue of smell. But I think we might have come across a reason for design, a design issue. I'm competing here, aren't I? But I think we may have come across a design issue that I can live with refusal. But I'd like an answer to the question I raised.
Thank you. Very good crescendo there. I might ban you from speaking after that. Councillor Sykes and myself, and then we'll go to the officers.
Regarding the chimney, that was the main concern, apart from the cosmetically look design, that was raised by all of us, and that hasn't been addressed. We did spend a lot of time talking about the rubbish, because there's not only the residents' rubbish, there's business rubbish, which would be collected separately. And we discussed the fact that bin lids would be opened at different hours and one thing another. We spent a lot of time on that, and we was told that would be addressed and be sorted and no problem. But obviously the main concern is the height of the chimney.
Thank you. I've listened to the debate, and I was probably in the Councillor Gamble area to start with, but knocking on the open door. Having seen this picture, it reminds me of somebody sticking a Lego brick on the outside of a building. We had a training course on design, and we were spoken to about thirds and about spirals, and I can't quite see how this actually fits any of them. Yes, it's better than the bright silver or the aluminium eyesore that was there originally. However, it doesn't solve the fundamental problems of the design that I think we pointed out at the time, and that is, the overhanging, the going along to that wall, I think it just looks a state, if I'm honest. I'm quite willing to support a refusal on design grounds. We may potentially lose at appeal, but there comes a point where we have to say, do you know what, this just isn't right. And I really just think this just simply isn't right. And I'm not against the idea of the takeaway. I wouldn't refuse it on any other grounds because of the inspector, and I wouldn't support refusal on any other grounds because of the inspector, because I think that would just cloud the issue. I think if we're going to fight this, we fight this purely on design grounds and nothing else. And if we lose, we lose. But to my mind, that is nothing like an acceptable design, whatever the colour. If we go back to the officers, then I've got Councillor McLean wanted to speak, and then Councillor Hayes.
Because of the fireworks, if I've missed anything, then just please let me know. There was discussion regarding adequate waste provision. There is a commercial bin which will be stored either in or next to the communal bin, which is at the rear of this parking area as well. And this is the same solution for the original scheme, and no concerns were raised regarding this. And the appeal inspector didn't raise any concerns regarding this. Therefore, it's considered there's an adequate waste provision. I also think there was questions regarding the maintenance and how it would be cleaned and whether it had to be dismantled. And there would be seamless access hatches provided, which allows you to effectively open up parts of the brick effect cladding and clean it, so therefore maintenance would be possible. If there's anything I've missed, please let me know.
I think design was quite a big feature.
Well, as I said previously, the only reason this was refused and dismissed was on design grounds, and it is considered that this has come a lot further than the original scheme, but I could propose that we defer this just for A3 use as a coffee shop without the flue, if members would prefer that option, and go into discussion with the agent.
Okay, you certainly had me at coffee. So we've got Councillor McLean.
Thank you, Chair. It's a shame, really. This building, it was it's been put there. It was a good design. If they want something like this, they built the shops in at the bottom. They should have put it in from the word go. Should have been included. As far as I'm concerned, I questioned it at the time at the site visit. It's not high enough. It will not. It's not. It's could be trapped. All the smells.
Yeah.
So it needs to be a lot higher, and it should be looking like a chimney effect, and it could have been the design could have been so much nicer for the area. I mean, they're terribly high buildings, and they're not particularly picturesque from the back, I have to, from a personal point of view, but so I think adding this to it is just unfair on the residents, and I think even if they could hide it some way, fine, but that's not hidden at all.
Councillor Hayes.
Well, I don't disagree with the criticisms on the design, but I am extremely unhappy that it says in 6.4 on page 66 that the council has not raised any concern, this is from the extract from the appeal decision last time round, that the council has not raised concerns regarding waste storage provision. Well, I thought others who were present at the last hearing were saying just now that there had been concerns raised, so unless the inspector was just referring to the officer's report at that time, it seems that it was actually the inspector was proceeding on an erroneous basis, and that what there were concerns about waste. Yeah. And then I look at page 68, which is the report this time, paragraph 3 near the top, it says the commercial bin measuring 1 metre by 1.27 metres by 1.38 metres will be stored in or next to the communal bin store, blah, blah, blah. This is a takeaway where there's going to be large numbers of cardboard boxes, there's going to be cooked food, there's going to be oil drums, there's going to be grease flowing. I know, I'm a town centre councillor, just step out my door and there's a row of takeaways in front of my eyes. This is what the reality is, that a takeaway is going to produce a variety of waste which needs to be separated and properly there should be proper provision for reuse, recycling, for the food waste to go off to the anaerobic digestion, which is our policy, for the cardboard boxes to be sent off inappropriately and not just chucked into one single bin. And it doesn't sound a very big bin either. So I stick to my guns. I think the waste issue is an issue as well as the design.
Councillor Chillingworth.
Chairman, I'm in the gamble camp of if we could find a reason for turning it down or deferring it, I think that's what we should do. Eleanor has proposed that we defer to investigate another use. I don't know. Yes, I was going to ask that. It sounds almost too good to be true because we're looking at an application. Can we, in fact, take the situation where we go back to the agents and say, is there another tenant available? Which I'm surprised at, but I do like the solution, I must say.
Yes, well, it was made aware to me today, actually, that perhaps the proposed tenants would look into a coffee shop use. Unfortunately, it didn't come up earlier within the scheme and certainly didn't come up when I was writing this report. So that is my suggestion, if members are keen to refuse it, to defer and perhaps seek another avenue if the agents are willing to go with that option. However, because it's only come to me today, I don't know how keen they are on that solution.
Councillor Gamble, you had your hand up.
Yeah, it was just to say that, to remind everybody that the resident who came actually pointed out that the Turkish gentleman was willing to open a coffee shop. Whether he will be when it comes to the crunch, we don't know, but it'd be worth checking.
Councillor Hazel.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I would like to see this refused and the officers to go to this Turkish gentleman. I think the sound of a coffee shop sounds brilliant, but if we defer it, it's going to come back. Well, I'm not really happy about the deferment. I prefer a refusal. Thank you.
Councillor Jarvis.
Yeah, I think I would go with that view as well. I think it's better to refuse this application, and if they want to go away and come back with another application more suitable, I would go with that.
Okay, I'm assuming that was a proposal from Councillor Hazel. What were the grounds that you wish to refuse the application on?
It would have to be design. We'd have to go with the design if that's what we're being asked to do. I think the picture looks great, but the reality will not be. So I would say design. And I do share Councillor Hayes' concerns and worries about the waste, but I'm not sure that that is on the table for us. If it is, I'd add that with it, but certainly design and quality of materials.
I think we are stuck literally with design. If my memory serves me correctly, I think there were queries about waste brought up on site when we did the site visit, and we were shown the bin store, where it would be, how it would be dealt with, and there was no objection from our environmental team, and I think that's where we come to with that. So I think to bring waste in now would, I think if we do it with as an appeal, we would just be clouding the issue. The vibe I'm getting from most members is that none of us are really happy with design for any reason, and we have a proposal for refusal. Councillor Moore, did you want to add?
Thank you. It's just my comment about rainwater hitting that horizontal surface has not been. Could that be woven into the objection to the design? Because I think in practice it's going to be not practical as well as not good looking. and not high enough. So I think it's detrimental to the residents.
Yeah, I think a design that is detrimental to the amenity of the residents might be a reasonable way to go, but I'll leave it to officers to word it correctly.
Chairman, you've got a proposal. Is that seconded, please?
We have a proposal for refusal from Councillor Hazel. I believe Councillor Jarvis, you seconded it. All those in favour of...
Chairman, sorry, I think you're just about to do something, you're mindful to do something against an officer recommendation. I think you need to invite the officers to explain to you whether there's any risks involved with that.
Okay, so we come to the dropped flowchart. Okay, we have a motion to overturn the officer's recommendation. It's been made and it's been seconded. It's now my job to request the officer's opinions on any implications.
Okay, so a refusal on design grounds would be consistent with the previous decision if you don't think that the changes that have been made have gone far enough. We're not introducing any new reasons for a refusal, which would present a risk. I think from the sound of it, the main concerns are the height of the chimney at the top and the fact that it doesn't appear like a chimney, it still looks like a flue poking out the top of a brick element. So there's something about that. There was a mention earlier about concerns of the horizontal element, which it's fair to say does look slightly unusual. And with water coming off the top, the only thing I would be slightly concerned about is that the government does advocate that if a solution is possible, that should be explored prior to refusal. And I wonder whether it would be possible to negotiate a taller chimney and also some sort of architectural treatment to the horizontal element that provided some sort of canopy or something like that. However, that isn't the proposal in front of you, so while there is the option of deferring it to explore that, you could also refuse it with an informative that those sorts of things might be something to explore if there was going to be any subsequent planning application that came in due course. So I don't think there's any reason to delay the decision, but whether there's any discussion subsequent to that. But if you wanted to take a vote on refusal tonight, I don't see why you couldn't.
Okay, I think it's been made clear that there's not a significant risk. There are obviously always risks regarding appeal. We have a motion for refusal, seconded. All those in favour?
Chairman, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. That's unanimous.
Okay, and that ends tonight's meeting. Thank you very much.